Hi there, my name's Paul, and I'd like to show you the Swarmitar. It's a Kontakt instrument that's loosely inspired by the Swarmatron, which has a bunch of oscillators in unison that can spread apart in pitch like a swarm of bees. But this one uses electric guitars played with an ebow as the sound source. I made a prototype of it, and it actually turned out great, so I ironed out all the kinks, and now I'm going to start from scratch and walk you through the process. But first, let's jump forward in time a little bit to future me, who's already made the thing, and he can give you a tour of the finished product, and then we'll come back here and start from the beginning. It's actually pretty easy. Come on. Okay, thank you, Past Paul. I hope you're having a nice Thursday. So this is it. This is the finished Swarmitar. What a grueling process it was. I know, it wasn't that bad. So this is it. It's the Swarmitar is a 15-layer ebow guitar Kontakt instrument based on the Swarmatron. I'll put a little video here or down below or something so you can check it out. But it's this crazy synth made popular by Trent, Reznor, and Atticus when they did The Social Network. Very cool, but very expensive, especially for how many uses it has. So at the heart of this instrument is the swarm knob, which will bend each individual layer in different directions and different amounts based on this swarm range control here. I'll give you a little demonstration. So you can stretch it out anything from one semitone up and down up to an octave up and down. It's also mapped to a controller in which you can remap to whatever you want. So at maximum, it's an octave up and an octave down in whole step intervals. There's also a low pass filter like a lot of instruments have. So you can really shape it almost like you'd shape a string pad or some sort of a synth pad. There's also a vibrato control, which gives it a slightly different amount and speed of vibrato to each layer. So you get this kind of blending that's a little different than the swarm up slightly. There's also pitch bend controls, separate ranges for up and down, so that way you've got a nice positive stop on your pitch bend wheel, so you're not trying to find the note in between the notes for whatever interval you want. And this is also automatable and with any CC control if you want to change it on the fly. And then lastly, you can click on each set of guitars. So this is an old Silvertone, this is a Les Paul, and this is a Gretsch baritone guitar. And you can deselect or select any of them that you want to hear in case you want to split up the patches to do different things. So here's just the Silvertone, just a Les Paul, which is pretty similar, and then just the baritone. So all three together sound pretty good. So that's it. That's the Swarmitar in a nutshell. So now we can go back to when I was making it and go through the process and see how we got from nothing to here. Okay, here we go. So here we are at the template for this project that I made. Here's my overall plan. I want to have at maximum swarm an octave up and an octave down in intervals of whole steps. So for that, I need 6 notes up, 6 notes down, and a root note. I'm going to split it among 3 guitars. So each guitar will go 2 up, 2 down, and each guitar will have a root note in case for some reason you want to use one separately. So that means we need 5 different layers from each guitar. We could record it one time and just duplicate it and pitch shift it, but that brings some weird phasey stuff, especially when you're dealing with really small swarms where you're only detuning them by a slight amount. So I'd like to have 5 distinct recordings for each layer. The best way I think to do that is to record it 3 times and then reverse 2 of them and that'll give me 5, and I only have to record 3 times. And since these ebowed guitar parts are just long sustained notes without an attack or much of an envelope, I can get away with reversing them, and it'll just give me some cooler textures to it, that some are going forwards and some are going backwards. So why don't we get started with this? I'm going to record the first guitar, which will be a silver tone, and here we go. Okay, so I got the first guitar here, which is the silver tone. I've got a really clean sound up. Because when you use the ebow, you can get pretty distorted just by using it over the pickup. So you don't need much more on top of that. And then technique-wise, I'm just going to vary where it is on the neck a little bit to get a little bit of movement in the note. And then also, I really like letting the string hit the ebow itself, and it gives it these little... these little burrs to the sound, and that'll sound extra cool when it's reversed too. So here we go. I'm just going to start recording. I've set it up so there's about 10 seconds for each note. That'll be plenty to find a good loop, and a little over 2 minutes per pass. So that times 9, it'll take me about 20 minutes to record all this, pending all my mistakes. Okay, we did it. That worked. So that's it for me for tonight, and tomorrow I'm going to come back and edit this thing. But before I do, let's just hear it all together and see how weird it is. Cool. It's a new day, time for editing. For this kind of thing, I'm going to edit super quick and dirty, and it doesn't need much. I don't need to worry about the ins and outs because I'm going to add my own envelope into Kontakt. So really, I just need to edit the ins and outs roughly. I'll check to make sure that each note is, pretty good. And then I'll make sure that it crossfades well so it'll loop in Kontakt. So first, I'm just going to edit it right on these markers for all of them. Okay, so now they're really roughly into shape, and I'm just going to listen through each one and make sure that I don't need to adjust the start point if I started a little bit late or let off of it a little bit early. It looks like, for instance, this one here, I probably started it late and went, I'll just do that by sight, actually. Because these don't have to be perfect, and it's actually better if they're a little messed up. I'm going to go through them now. Okay, that's everything. I've gone through, I've edited, I had to do one little crossfade, but other than that, everything worked great. I'm going to bounce it down to new tracks, so those are printed on, and then we'll make them loop. Okay, now to make them loop. The method I like to use is just pick a spot in the middle. That'll be my start point. And then go like this somewhere. And now I know that the transition between this spot and this spot is seamless because they literally are together. Put a crossfade on here, and then if I were to loop this by itself, it's seamless. And these don't have to be the same length. They can be whatever length they want. I'll just loop the entire sample, and it should work fine. So I'll just do that for all the samples now. Okay, that took a little while. I don't know, you could watch the clock and subtract and see how long it took me. But I went through all of those, and now I'm ready to just bounce them all out. So this is the important part. I'm going to name them now, and I'm going to name them all like this. SWT for Swarmitar. This will be Silvertone. And this is number 1. And then this is note E1. So what this will give me is a group number and then a note number that Kontakt will be able to recognize and auto map. That'll save us a ton of time. So what I'll do is I'll copy this part. So then I can just say A1. Paste D2, paste G2. And I'll fast forward through this too. Okay, they're all named, so now we can export them. We'll select them all. We'll export 84 regions as audio files. Just gonna want to put it in our bounces folder, and we'll just make it rename. We want no normalize, there's no effects anyways, this doesn't really matter. We'll save it in 24-bit wave and export. Okay, so that's everything. We've got all of our 84 samples in here. It's taking 380 megabytes. Not too bad. So that's it for Logic, and now we'll go into Kontakt. Okay, Kontakt, here we are. As you can see, I changed the file name slightly of all the samples. My brain turned off for a minute when I was naming them. I don't want the name of the guitar and the number of the layer to be separated because I want that whole thing to be the group name. Otherwise, we'll have 3 groups that are just called 0, 1 when Kontakt auto maps everything. So I changed all those. You can do it very easily in the Finder with their batch rename function. And so here we go. So I'm going to create a new instrument by double clicking. I'm going to name it Swarmitar. I'm going to open up the wrench, open up the mapping editor. And then I'm going to create the groups now because that'll save us time later. Now I can drag in all the samples. I'll just select all, drag them into Kontakt here. Then when I can right click, go to Auto Map Setup. Here I wanted to ignore SWT because that's just the name of the whole instrument. Barrio 1 will be the group name and A1 will be set to the single key. Hit apply. Then I want to set the root key of each sample to the center of the note, so that way each key plays the note that it's on. And then because the baritone guitars have a larger range, I need to do this part separately. I can select all the samples that are in the Silvertones and the Les Pauls, and then spread them out by the root note. Then I can do the same thing with the baritones. Spread them out by the root note. And now, theoretically, we should have an instrument that works where every note sounds the way it's supposed to. It's going to be very loud. The envelope isn't set up, but you should be able to hear notes. Success. I won't loop or anything yet, but that's what we'll do next. And then lastly, I'll just set the range of the instrument to the 88 notes of your MIDI keyboard. The next thing to do will be to go through all the samples painstakingly and make sure that they all loop. So I don't know why you can't just do this as a batch function if they're all different lengths, but that's what you got to do. So what I will set is select zone via MIDI, so that way I can play up the keyboard and select them. Open up the wave editor. With each one, I got to click this little one. And I'm going to repeat that a bunch of times. Okay, theoretically that should be all of them. Great. So next we'll do a little bit of panning. Make one in the center. 2 can be all the way to the left. 3 can be all the way to the right. Now before we go any further, this would be a good time to duplicate and reverse some of the groups like we've been wanting to do. So we'll duplicate 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, and then with all of these we'll want to reverse them. Now this part's fun. This is just putting everything back into order. The easiest way I found to do it is to just duplicate the tracks in the order that you want them to be and then delete all the original groups. So we'll duplicate the 3 silver tones and then the reverse ones. Then we'll duplicate these 3 Les Pauls and then these 2 Les Pauls. And then we'll duplicate these 3 baritones, these 2 baritones, and all of these groups can be deleted. Then I'll rename these. Okay, now let's hear that. That's our next step. Beautiful. What we can do here is pan these like 50 to the left and these 50 to the right. Pretty wide. So there's a few more just modulators and effects and stuff we have to add into the Kontakt instrument, and then we'll be ready to do a little bit of scripting. It's not that bad. And then we'll be in really good shape. First up will be in the source modulator. We already have pitch bend, but we want to add an LFO to all of these groups, and we'll just bring it down real low, so that way we can get a little vibrato on the pitch. See what it sounds like now. But we're going to change it for each patch too, so it'll be just these slow moving vibrato. And then under the amplifier modulator, we just need to add one, and that's adding CC11 so we can have expression control. So we go to add modular, external sources, MIDI CC. We want it to be controller number 11, and we want it to default to 127, and that's it. Now I've got my expression fader. We'll control the volume. Next, we want to set the output of each guitar into a different bus. That way, if we want to apply any effects to one guitar, if there's any corrective EQ we decide we want to do at this late stage, we can do that. So I'll take all the silver tones, I'll send them out to bus 1. All the Les Pauls will go out to bus 2, and all the baritones to bus 3. Now if I play, you hear it coming out of all 3. We'll be able to solo just the silver tone, or just the Les Paul, or just the baritone. The last thing we have to do in here is to add a filter. I'm going to add it to the instrument insert effects, that way it affects all of them. For now, I'll set that to my mod wheel. So now I'll just go through again and adjust each LFO separately, so that way we can get that modulating vibrato that we can turn on and off as time goes on. So we can do that in each group. Here is the width of it, and then here will be the speed. So that one can stay the same because I haven't done anything. This one, I'll make it a little bit wider and a little bit faster. And I'll just do this kind of by random, and that way they'll just constantly be moving and you're not going to get anything that sounds exactly the same. Now you really get that smooth chorusing, which will be nice to be able to bring in with control. One thing that I forgot to mention that we need to add in under the wrench is a modulator for the LFO on the pitch for that vibrato. So I just want to make sure that I've got select all groups enabled. I go down, you could get to it here by going to the LFO, clicking this little guy, it'll bring you to here. And then I want to add a modulator, an external source, a MIDI CC. I'll use 111 as my internal modulator, and this will modulate the intensity. So I'll just set this vibrato amount to CC 111 when you move it, and that'll control that. That's it for under the wrench and Kontakt. The next step we have to do is actually put the script in. So I'll open up Sublime Text, which is the script editor that I use, and we'll start getting this going. So in this video, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the script itself. It's a pretty deep topic that could take a while to get through, so I'm just going to do a little time lapse. So the first thing I'm doing here is setting up the GUI. I'm adding the wallpaper, adding all the buttons and sliders and labels, assigning all the right pictures to them, and putting everything into place. For any controls that I don't know the exact coordinates for, I'll use this little dummy knob trick that I learned from David Bowie. I'll link to his Kontakt course below. It's a really great resource, especially if you're new to Kontakt scripting, and that's what I used when I was just getting started. Now I'm just doing some tweaks and fine-tuning the behavior of some of these controls, and then finally I can get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. Getting the guitar select buttons to work, scripting the low pass filter, the ADSR controls, the vibrato, and the pitch bend controls. And then finally, the fun part for me is the swarm knob. You guys have already heard it, but for me, this is actually the first time that I'm hearing it do the thing that I made it to do. Okay, so we're in a good place now. Everything is working. I'll do just a quick demonstration of what I've scripted into this thing. So that's it.
No, it was not.
I forgot something. The one thing that I wanted to add that I forgot to add yesterday was a randomized sample start point. So that way if you play two notes that use the same sample, you bend it up a little bit, you're not going to get the weird phasing that happens from using two identical samples. And you get a little variation every time you hit the keyboard, and hey, who wouldn't want that? So it's easy, it only takes a minute. You open up the wrench, you edit all groups, you select all zones, and then down here there's this S mod, that's the sample start modulation range. I recorded this at 96K, so I'll just put 96,000 samples. We'll randomize this in the span of 1 second. Now it hasn't done it yet, it's only done that for that one sample that's selected, so we just have to copy it to all the other zones. Copy current start mod settings. So now every sample should be at 96, yes. And then we go down to the modulators, add a modulator, random unipolar, set it up to 100%. Right now it's 12 semitones, but when we switch it to sample start, it'll be 100%. And then we can test it out. See, it's starting from a different point each time. That's it. Okay, back to yesterday. I'll put a link down in the description so you can check it out for yourself. It'll be free. I'm planning on making a few more of these with other sound sources. I've got a lot of stuff around that I can sample and make long sustained notes out of that could bend in different ways. Just stay tuned. Alright, I have to say this, right? If you like this video, please click the little thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like, and hopefully I'll be making some more of these as I make some more Swarm blank instruments, if only just to be notified when there's something else free to download and put on your hard drive and forget to use. So thanks for watching.